Welcome to Maine, we're stretched to the bone. Prices keep rising, the paycheck stays prone. Inflation keeps knocking, won't leave us alone. They're selling the lie, groceries climbing, the gas tank is low. The bill's hitting harder than snow, but silence still blankets the truth. Where does it go? They're selling the lie. Housing is gridlocked from Portland to the county. Workers commute far past what feels soundly. Talk of solution comes yearly, not loudly. They're selling the lie. They're selling the lie. Say every voice counts, but watch who gets lifted. Some stories vanish, some get the spotlight shifted. Depends on what trends and what keeps them gifted. They're selling the lie. I won't believe them, I wanna believe, but truth's always stuck in between. Static and spin, drown the signal again. Nothing is what it seems. I wanna believe you, but every headline turns daylight into redesigned skies. Facts get twisted, context missing. We choke on the simplified alibis. Wanna believe you, but all I see is shadows where the answers should shine. The fact is fiction.
Welcome to the Muddy Waters Podcast, where Mainers tell their stories, unfiltered.
Welcome to the Muddy Waters Podcast. My name is Chuck Ellis, and I am your host, as always. As you all know at this point, I imagine the Muddy Waters Podcast exists to help the people of Maine better understand what's going on in our state by reporting on the things and talking about the things that the mainstream media doesn't want to talk about. They don't want to share you the stories of the real things that are happening that don't fit the narrative of the Democrat Party, because the mainstream media has largely become a propaganda arm of the Democrat Party. Fortunately, we have freedom fighters like the Maine Wire and Unquirer on X and Maine X Community on Facebook who are doing some incredible investigative journalism to shine the light on what's really happening. And we're actually, unfortunately and unfortunately, we're getting a lot of national attention because of the crazy things that are happening, and really because of how well these other people are amplifying the voice of what's actually happening. And so part of how we do this and is that one of the things that I like to say is stories are really, really valuable. It's really easy for people to disregard facts, but it's a lot harder for them to disregard stories. So I like to interview people, bring people on, candidates, or just moms or people who are involved in their community, business owners, to talk about what's really going on. What are the real stories that the mainstream media doesn't want us to know? And today we're fortunate to have with us school board member and candidate for state house or a Maine state representative in District 94 in Lewiston, Janet Beaudoin. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks so much for coming on. More importantly, I would say thanks for doing two thankless tasks. One is being a school board member. Whew.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the unsung heroes are people that are school board members, but especially people who are school board members in very challenging districts that are controlled by crazy leftists is how that's my phrase. You don't have to say that, but I'm going to say that because that just fine. Seems to be what it is. And then on top of that, considering a run for state house in a relatively challenging district. So thank you so much for doing challenging things and giving us an opportunity to have sane policies in our schools and towns and state.
I really try. It is funny that you call it a, crazy leftist run organization, because school boards are supposed to be nonpartisan, right? And consistently, our school board has voted down party lines for basically everything that could be considered controversial. It's always down party lines. And unfortunately, I've always been on the losing end of that party line. And so I actually just had this conversation the other night. Like, just one small win would feel so good for once, because after 5 years of just constantly trying to make change and trying to use my voice for the good, I know I'm representing people in Lewiston who feel the same way that I feel. I know there's a lot of conservatives here, but it gets super frustrating to be in that same position where a vote fails 5-4. And it's just constant, and that's Lewiston. But if I wasn't there, then we wouldn't have a voice at all, right? And I find a little bit of hope in that, like, and I know other people do too. They appreciate the fact that I will say the things and I will bring up the issues that, the left just doesn't want to talk about, and they don't want to bring it up. So, yeah, it's a thankless job. It is what it is, but I'm happy to do it because I like to have a say.
Yeah, well, again, the rest of us are very thankful for people like that, because we're in districts where people aren't willing to stand up. We don't know what's going on. There may be worse things going on in other districts, but we just don't hear about it because we don't have people there. But I also think that one of the ways in which you change culture, so some people would tell me that culture is down, or politics are downstream from culture, I think is the term. I actually believe that politics and culture have a symbiotic relationship, where politics informs and affects culture, but culture largely determines who is going to be elected. So it's this like symbiotic relationship. But I think, like, speaking truth and highlighting the reality of what's going on in places like where you are is part of how we change that culture. Bringing these things to light is how you help other, more conservative, sane is what I would use, conservative and sane school board members elected, by highlighting what the problem is, getting people motivated enough to be like, okay, I've had enough of that. We're going to try to get out there and we're going to try and stop this. And so that's what gives people hope. That's what encourages people. And so hopefully we can turn the tides at some point. I think people, especially in Maine, especially where things have gotten, they are a bit hopeless about a lot of these more liberal areas. And why? What have we done for the past 40, 50 years? We've ceded more and more over to liberals, and the liberal areas have gotten more liberal. Maybe the conservative areas have gotten a bit more conservative, not necessarily a ton. And so it leaves people feeling like this is a hopeless task that we're not ever going to be able to win, which I don't think is true.
Right.
But because, like, again, 50 years ago, like Falmouth, for instance, we'll use that as an example, I think was conservative. I think 50 years ago, Republicans were running the city of Westbrook. How did it change? Well, it didn't change overnight. It was a slow progression. And I think what we need to do as conservatives is try to think about the long game and not just the short game. This is one of the mistakes I think we've made. And if we can focus on the long run and try to do the things that will help us win in the long run, while also doing as much as we can to win in the short term, but without compromising the long term, I think that gives us, that's how we take back our state. And so, situations like yours and just holding ground and standing up is so incredibly significant. And I think we'll hopefully, we don't know where the future holds, but I'm hopeful about where things will go from here, especially as the feds begin investigating some of the insanity. So tell us. I want to get into some of the stuff that's going on in Lewiston, but first and foremost, I want to know more about you, where you come from, what motivated you in the midst of this like hopeless, scenario, this seemingly hopeless scenario, to like be like, you know what? I think I want to go and sit on the school board and listen to insanity and not be able to affect anything, but just be there and be a front row to the crazy things that are being pushed. So again, that whole story, what's your story about how you got here? And then what on top of that we can get into, like, possesses you to want to run for state legislature?
Sure. So I moved to Lewiston back in 2000. end of 2000, early 2001. It was right before 9/11. So it must have been early 2001. I moved here. And I moved here because my husband has a family business here. So we have a small business. It just made sense. Like Lewiston is where we're going to be. So this is where we landed. This is where we got married. This is where we had children and bought our first house. And this is, continues to be where we're going to live because our business is here. And so somewhere in the middle of COVID is actually when I started getting the most active in politics. It kind of started a little bit before that. My children were younger. I was on the PTO at their elementary school. I've always been just a very involved parent. I've always wanted to have a say in what's going on and how can I help and how can I volunteer. And so I was that mom that was pretty much in my kids' classrooms every single day, volunteering, working with students who needed a little extra help, photocopying for teachers. And then it just sort of naturally put me on the PTO. And then I organized a 5K for the school and brought back school dances and did all the fun things. And somewhere in the middle of that, the politics piece came into it in Lewiston because my youngest daughter ended up in a kindergarten classroom with 28 students and no ed techs. So it was this one teacher, God bless him, he was wonderful, and he had 28 5-year-olds to contend with. And that was just mind-blowing to me. And I knew that it couldn't be legal. Like, how do you have 28 kids with one teacher? That doesn't seem legal when they're that young. And so I went to the school board for the first time as a young mom, and I demanded an ed tech, or at least another classroom another kindergarten classroom in my daughter's school. And I actually got the extra classroom approved that night. And that was kind of my first taste of the school board, where I saw, okay, I can show up and I can make a stink about something and I can get something done, right? And so that was the beginning of it. But I didn't actually consider going on to the school committee till COVID happened. And I'm sure a lot of people can relate. COVID drove me nuts. The policies that they put into place, the science that they followed that wasn't actually science, the 6-foot rule that made no sense, the masking that made no sense, only but when they were standing, but then when they were sitting and they could take their mask off, none of it made any sense. And so I ended up going to the school board again, and I was pretty angry because at that point school had been shut down and they were considering the next year. It was going into the year of 2021, and they were considering how they were going to reopen school. And they went with a hybrid model, and my kids were in school half of the time. And the other half of the time that they weren't in school, we were inviting as many people over as we could, and they were doing school together online in my living room. And not masked, because that's how much respect I had for all of the COVID rules. It just didn't make any sense to me, and it made me so angry. And on the Lewiston School Board at the time was a gentleman named Kieran Majoris Collins. You might know that name. He actually was one of the two people that just ran in the primary or caucused against each other to be the nominee for this special election that I'm a part of. And Kieran actually lost, which is great. But he's the reason I entered that school committee, because he had a lot of wild ideas. He wanted every single kid to be required to get vaccinated before they could return to school. He didn't want school to happen at all. He wanted it all remote, all online. And for the foreseeable future, he just had so many crazy ideas. And I think one of the biggest ones was he tried to get rid of all of our SROs from Lewiston Public Schools. He was just a part of that whole craze when it broke out during COVID. The BLM, the defund the police. He took every national Democratic headline he could, and he brought it to the Lewiston School Committee. And it was so infuriating. I couldn't keep my mouth shut. And I became this big advocate against him and against everything he was trying to do to our school district. And in the middle of all of that, a vacancy appeared. The Ward 2 representative from Lewiston actually took a job with Lewiston Public Schools in a different capacity, so had to resign from their seat. And our mayor at the time, MaineCare, who was a Democrat, I think he disliked Kiernan as much as I did, to be honest. But he respected me and he respected my opinions and the things that I was, I was trying to keep some normalcy, right? And so he appointed me to the school committee to kind of take on Kiernan toe to toe, and the rest is history. So I've been there since 2021.
Wow. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
that was
pretty,
that was a mouthful.
yeah, no, that's a lot, but
asked.
it's obvious. It's obviously really great. I imagine, especially since much of the nonsense that was going on during that time was as a result of somebody else named Janet, that you became probably more infuriated with this person than the average person because she shares your name.
Absolutely. Yeah.
No, not that Janet.
Not that Janet. Yes. Not that Janet. No, funny story, just real quick. My good friend who also serves on the Lewiston School Committee with me, her name is Megan Hurd. She represents Ward 6. She's got 2 youngins, and her oldest son, Pearson, calls me Janet Mills. Every time that I call, it happened today. Is that Janet Mills? He'll say. And he's the only person that can get away with that because he's so cute. Yeah.
You have a nice little saying that you said at our event a couple of weeks ago. Yeah, go for it. What is it?
I am not your run-of-the-mills Janet.
There you go. Yeah. I like it. As I've been announcing that you're going to come on, I've been using that phrase to talk about who you were, because I think it's hilarious. But yeah, I mean, the COVID lockdowns were crazy, and I think COVID in general like woke so many people up to what was going on. I think in some ways, as crazy as it sounds, because of how horrible COVID was, we have to some degree be thankful that it did happen. Because it kind of got in the way of that frog boiling kind of scenario where we were halfway boiled, but we were still have some of our wits about us. And then all of a sudden we're like, wait, hold on, we're in a pot. We're being, that whole scenario. And so it woke so many people up before it was too late. Like I'm hopeful that we're going to be able to turn the tide. I think Trump winning the 2024 election was really big. And going back to a point that you made earlier, I like this whole idea that school boards or city council are nonpartisan is absolute nonsense to me, because everybody carries their political ideology with them wherever they go. It's almost like saying, Christians, keep your politics at home, keep your religion at home, and don't bring it out into the public. It's like, no, I'm a Christian everywhere I go. Like these are my values, right? And so they impact every aspect of my life. And so they're going to go everywhere. They're going to go to work. They're going to go. I'm not saying I'm going to push Christianity on people, but my values and what I believe are going to go with me wherever I go. And again, like one of the sneakiest and like worst things I think about the Democrat Party and the way in which they operate, especially their control of the mainstream media, is how they present their ideology simply as truth. And anybody opposing it is somebody who's pushing politics. Right. And I'm sure and so especially when it comes to this, like they're probably saying, oh no, we're not being partisan. We're just going with what's true. And you who are on the right are positioned as being this, oh, you right-wing extremists bringing your politics in here.
Oh yeah, everything is, I've actually in the last, 24 hours had a couple trolls jump on my my socials and say that I don't care about the kids at all. Like that, and I'm just, trying to enhance my political career, which it's so far from the truth. It's just funny. I mean, if you know me at all, you know who I am and where my heart is. So I'm so used to the left using terms like that and accusing me of certain things just because I don't share the same ideological views as them. But yeah, that's politics, right?
Yeah. I dealt with it in a previous job of mine where there are a bunch of don't talk about politics at work, right? Which I'm okay with, actually. But then they would have like specific initiatives that were political. It's like, okay, and they were leftist political, right? And that's just, well, no, we're not being political. We're just right. It's like, okay. The gaslighting here is a little aggressive. But yeah, so that's kind of what got you in and got you involved. And like, I just can't, like, sometimes I have a hard time understanding like how somebody can continue to fight and continue to lose and keep getting back up and keep going in and continuing to fight. what is it that like kind of gives you the motivation to continue doing that?
I mean, honestly, first and foremost, it's my kids. As I said, I have two daughters. One is in college now, and the other is 16 years old, and she's graduating this year as an early grad, which wasn't really in the plans, but it sort of became the plan last year because she's just had enough of Lewiston Public Schools. She's just had enough. So she doubled up on some college courses and has got herself in a position where she will graduate at 16. But my kids keep me going. I actually almost didn't run for the school committee for this like final term that I just got sworn into on Monday night. And my daughter Brooklyn, my youngest, was like, "Mom, like you got to hand me my diploma. You gave Natalie her diploma on stage. You got to hand me my diploma." And I was like, you're right. You're right. I gotta stick this out. I gotta do this one last time just to get you through. So that is my main motivation, is my kids and just making sure that nothing too crazy is going on in our school district. And honestly, I really I like being in the know. I like having sort of the behind the scenes advantage of hearing what is going on in our district. And I like being in charge of cleaning the school up. I don't love disciplinary hearings. That's probably the worst part of the job, is having to sit in and expel a kid. But when you hear what they've done and you see the result of their actions, it feels good to know that I'm a part of taking the problem out of the school and keeping peace and usefulness in our schools. Like, to me, that's really important. Safety is so important. So any way I can keep my kids safe while they're there, I'm all for it. So that's what keeps me going.
Yeah. And so what has so obviously we've got this House District 94 that has come open as a result of the previous representative taking some job with the Democrat Party or something like that as an aide for somebody.
A full-time secretary, the third for somebody. I don't follow the Democrats, honestly. So
oh my gosh, yeah, it's hard to keep track of all their money. Although, is it going to dry up with all this fraud investigations that are going on? Well, that's another story. That may affect some of their funding sources. But so obviously, so what caused you to say that, okay, this is what I want to do now? I want to run for House. Like, what is it that motivates you to do that? And then, like, what are you running? What are you running on? Like, what is your like? What my brain's
my platform.
There you go. Thank you. What is your platform?
Yeah, no problem. So I actually ran for this seat back in 2022, and it wasn't anything I ever really aspired to do. But the election came around, and some people came to talk to me from the Republican Party, like, "Hey, would you ever consider running for a higher office?" And I hadn't ever really thought about it. But I was like, what? Yeah, all right, I'll try it. So I ran. And I thought I did a pretty good job. It was very eye-opening. It was a very surreal experience to run for a higher office like that. I did the clean elections where I got the $5 donations, and I did it all. And it was so much work. It was so much work. And on election night, I ended up losing. I was neck and neck with Kristen Cloutier, who resigned. I was neck and neck with her, and then absentee ballots came in, and she beat me by 600 votes in absentee ballots.
Wow.
So that was devastating. I mean, I'm not gonna lie. I was, I had a good cry when that happened, like with all that work, all that build up, and then I didn't win. And it's the first time I've really failed at something. So that was a hard pill to swallow. But I think everything happens for a reason. And, I have a lot of faith, and what has transpired over the last 3 years is God has showed me why I didn't get into the State House 3 years ago. And a large piece of that is my children, and what I've had to do for my children over the last 3 years. I won't get into too much of that, but let's just say I probably would not have had the time to deal with the office that I had run for. So I'm actually really grateful. And it's given me a chance to step back and just focus more on Lewiston politics, right? But one of the main reasons I ran the first time was because I saw the disparity between the laws that were like holding our tying our hands behind our back on the school committee that were made at the state level, and it was super frustrating to me. For example, they Augusta put a law, the state put a law into place that students, I think it's 6th grade and younger, are not allowed to be expelled. You're not allowed to do anything more than, a principal can suspend them for a few days. But unless there's like a case of like guns or something, that's the only caveat there. So we had a lot of interesting situations that I dealt with, and I can't like tell you what those were. I mean, there's confidentiality laws, but we had a lot of interesting things that had come up over the years. And it was extremely frustrating to sit back and go, okay, all right, so we're just going to let this kid come back and this is going to happen all over again. And it was like this cycle. And I was also finding by the time students got into middle school, into high school, we were getting them into a disciplinary hearing, and we were seeing a stack this thick of disciplinary write-ups from elementary school, and nothing could be done. And so it was just leading them into this cycle of when they got to middle school, to high school, it was just inevitable that they were going to do something. And it just felt like there has to be a better way, like a better early intervention for these kids. But the state laws were just tying our hands behind our back. So that was actually the first piece of anything that kind of made me think beyond just the Lewiston School Board, right? And then as I've sat back over the 3 years and really paid attention and watched what's been happening in this city, there is so much more. There's so much more now going through my brain that I just feel like I want to go up to Augusta to try to fix. I feel ignored. Every single House rep in Lewiston is from the Democratic Party, and our Senate rep is from the Democratic Party. And they do not care about the other half of Lewiston that has a different opinion than them. And so I am running to be the voice for the people in this city who feel ignored, because I feel ignored and I am so tired of it. That, we are just watching things unfold every single day. We're making national headlines. It's not okay. It's not okay. And if we were not a liberal run city, a liberal run state, I don't think any of this attention would be on us right now. None of this garbage would be happening. And it's just common sense. And so I'm running because I just want to be a voice that opposes the other Lewiston reps up in Augusta. Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's unfortunate. One of the things that we sometimes talk about is I've talked with some people that coordinate with school boards and stuff like that, and one of the things that they've told me is if you have a conservative majority on the school board, if they don't have a lot of support from the community showing up to the meeting where a big topic is going to happen, they may cave. Right. And not vote according to their values, because conservatives are much more willing to, they're listening to the people. They're trying to do what the people want a bit more, honestly. Whereas liberals, they could know 100% beyond a shadow of a doubt that they're going to lose their seats based on how they vote, but they have the power now, and so they're going to do it now. They don't care if 1,000 people show up and tell them, "Hey, we don't think this is right." They're going to vote the same way no matter what. Generally speaking, again, there may be some exceptions here and there, and I don't want to but the reality is the vast majority of them, they're just going to vote in party line, and not listen and not care about what the other side has to say. And we as conservatives, I'm not saying that we shouldn't. I think we shouldn't compromise on our values, even if we're trying to understand people. But I think we need to maintain trying to listen and understand while also standing firm. So we need to stand a bit firmer, I think, as conservatives. But yeah, so the world that we live in is crazy, and you've mentioned like
Yes.
some crazy things that are happening in
Mhm.
Lewiston that might
Mhm.
potentially have some impact outside of the school board. Although there's the school board is also connected. Like
Yeah.
I can't tell you. I started following school board stuff because of Unquire on X. I started following school board stuff in Lewiston a while back, and part of it was like just talking about how challenging the district is,
It is.
for and just like how like a lot of people don't feel safe, the teachers don't feel safe,
Mhm.
and the school board has not really been doing the right types of things to take care of the teachers and things like that. But then there's also that scenario where that one girl was like beat up on a bus, and then
Mhm.
everything to do with that. I think the mom's name was Heather. And anyway, just a lot of crazy stuff was happening in the past, and so I've been paying attention. Obviously,
Mhm.
Lewiston is in the spotlight right now for a variety of reasons. One is being this other
It
school board
was
member. Is it Oman Osman? I think who was
Amon
appointed.
Osmond. Yeah.
Oman Osman, who was
Yeah. So
appointed.
he was appointed last December.
Mhm.
And it was after our Ward 5 rep. She ended up losing her apartment in Lewiston and had to move to Auburn. And she was forthcoming straight up with us, like, hey, I'm going to be moving to Auburn. She was devastated because she really enjoyed her time in the school committee. And, her and I didn't have the same political views. Her name was Ashley Medina, but I really respected her because she would listen and she would compromise, and that's exactly what you're supposed to do on a school board, right? She wore her heart on her sleeve. Very sweet girl, but she ended up having to resign because she moved to Auburn, and she was honest. She let us know, I'm not going to be living in Ward 5 anymore. I can't represent Ward 5. So shortly after, um, Mayor Shalene appointed Amon Osman to the school committee, and this was in December of 2024. He appointed him. Now, if you look at the timeline in October of 2024, there was, and this isn't something that was on my radar. When Amon was initially appointed to the school committee, I didn't know anything about him. And shortly after he was appointed, I don't know, a lot of people might not know about this. It's out there, but I don't know why no one's really picked up on it, because I don't know that it can really be like fact checked. But somebody from the Somali community emailed the city council a 5-page dossier listing out all of the things about Ayman Osman that we should all know. And it was horrific, and it was actually scary. And in it spoke about Homeland Security is currently investigating him. It talked about drug use. It talked about guns. It talked about gangs. It talked about a lot of things, and it was disturbing, to say the least. And when the city council got it, they said nothing about it. They sat on it. I believe they gave it to legal. I don't know what they did with it, but they did not make it public. And somebody acquired it in a FOIA. And I want to say it was by accident, but it happened. And once that person acquired it, they started sending it to us, to various school board members. So we knew who we were sitting with on the school board. When that dossier hit us, that's when we put together the drug bust that had happened 2 months prior to his appointment to the school committee. So there was the largest meth bust in Lewiston history in October of 2024 at 210 Blake Street. Everybody who was living there illegally because it was never coded for residential use. The night that drug bust happened, everybody in that building, according to witnesses, there's no photos from that night, but witnesses have said everybody was taken out in cuffs. And as we know, there was just one individual that was actually charged with federal drug charges, and he today still sits in federal prison awaiting his day in court. So it sounds as though whoever was in there, we know now Amon was living there, right? So he was one of the individuals, but there were never any drug charges brought upon him, just one individual that night. So I've heard things like the way that things work is that, one person is usually pinned and everyone else is kind of free. So we'll see if anything comes of that, if anything changes. I'm certainly paying attention. But Amon's not been charged with anything from that night. And so that happened. And then we figured that out. And when we figured that out, that green light came on like, hey, wait a minute. 210 Blake Street was condemned that night. Like they used an extraordinary amount of like chemicals, the DEA and the police did when they raided that building, and the building was condemned that night. So it has been condemned since October of 2024. So nobody lives there. And Amon used that residence to accept his appointment onto the school committee, and then used that residence and signed another affidavit to run for city council. So, I mean, I feel like we all know this story now, right? Like you can't even make this stuff up.
What's wild is, like, to me, I partly look at this and I'm like, why in the world would somebody continue to do this? Like, what is the motivation of this individual? And I don't completely understand outside of,
I think it's
I don't
bad
know.
advice, honestly. I think it's bad advice
Yeah.
from his attorney. And his attorney is Karen Majoris Collins. There's that name again.
I think I saw him in a video by the Maine Wire recently
Mhm.
trying to interview Iman. Well, anyway, so that's a current school board member, and I think this came up to the school board, and they were trying to figure out whether or not they were going to investigate
Mhm.
him because of the fact that he apparently or does not appear to live in the ward, and so therefore should not have any reason to be able, similar to the person who you said vacated the position because she didn't live, she was no longer going to be living
Mhm.
in the ward. If he's not living in the ward, he can't represent the ward.
Right.
And somehow, like, what blows my mind is that, like, if I don't understand how it's right for him to have even been able to vote, but there was a vote at the school board, right, where whether or not
Yeah.
he was going to be investigated for this, and partly because he and his campaign manager, who also is on the school board, which seems like a conflict of interest to be able to vote on this for both of them, but they both were able to vote and said that he would not be investigated. This was a couple weeks ago, I think, right?
This was mid to end November.
Okay.
It was actually, we had an executive session to discuss a residency issue. That was all we knew. When we came out of executive session to vote, Elizabeth Eames, who is the Ward 3 representative, then announced that she was Amon's campaign manager, and she just wanted to put that out there before we voted. So by doing that, she essentially let the world know, because the votes are public knowledge, right? The executive session is not. So she let the world know what we just discussed and what we were about to vote on by doing that. So, I've had Amon's lawyer say things about, like, you shouldn't be discussing what happened in executive session. Well, I haven't discussed what happened in executive session. I've discussed what's happened, as soon as we came out of executive session, which is Elizabeth Eames announced she was the campaign manager for Amon, and she just wanted to put that conflict of interest out there, but she didn't recuse herself. And then we voted
And
on whether or not we should, um, investigate his residency issues. And when we voted, it went right down party lines as normal. So it was a 5-4 fail. It was a 5-4 fail.
5-4 fail with two people who, by all rights, have, because of a conflict of interest, seems like they should not be voting. But I don't know.
They
I'm not a
shouldn't have.
lawyer. I mean,
Well, I mean, technically, Elizabeth, I mean, they both had the right to vote, right?
yeah.
In our charter, it says, like, if you feel as though you cannot be impartial to what we're voting on, then you should recuse yourself. But it's ultimately your decision. Like, you have to sleep with that at night, right? So they made the decision that
Yeah.
that they didn't feel impartial, and they were voting. So that was their choice. I will say there's been a lot of talk about, like, well, if they hadn't, then then the investigation would have happened. And that's not also correct, because to open an investigation, it had to be a super majority. there had to be at least
Okay.
5 yes votes, regardless. And so
Okay.
we only had 4 yes votes. That investigation was not happening on the school board. So I just want to clear that up. It wasn't going to happen.
Yeah.
It went down party lines. And Scott Harriman voted no. He would not investigate. And he publicly gave the reasonings why after, and he said, well, there was a lot of stuff, but like, I just didn't understand. It didn't seem like enough stuff to open an investigation. That same stuff just went to city council, and they just voted to open an investigation. So I wonder what changed. Couldn't be the fire under his feet right now with everything, but
I don't know. Maybe the firearms charge that he has.
yeah,
for,
I mean, maybe that's why.
That's come up since. Like that was after what happened there. Is he was arrested.
Yeah.
For possession of an illegally obtained. I don't know the exact details.
He wasn't actually arrested. He was summoned.
Okay.
They chose not to arrest him, but they gave him a summons to court, and he was indicted by a grand jury on 2 stolen gun charges. Oh goodness, I'm so sorry. There goes my laptop.
Right.
And so yeah, he actually appeared in court today and pled not guilty on both charges.
Obviously. Wow.
Yeah. But an indictment is a lot different than like, we're just arresting you and we're, we think this happened. An indictment is they have the evidence. A grand jury has looked it over and showed the judge, and the judge is like, yep, grab them. Like, that's how an indictment works. And so usually with an indictment, you don't plead not guilty. You take a plea deal or you're going to trial and you're going to be found guilty. So I don't think this is going to end for Hyman. I mean, I don't know. I'm not a lawyer, but this doesn't look good for him.
No, it doesn't, and it doesn't look good. Unfortunately, like what's interesting is we're in some crazy times in America right now,
Yeah,
and I don't know. I feel like no matter what I say, somebody's going to criticize me. So I'm just going to say, like, I feel like we have to be we have to fight against, and we have to be very, very cautious and careful about getting into a place where we blame an entire community of people based on the actions of some, right? And so, like, I want to say that, and so this is a challenging time for the Somali community in America in general, and really worldwide. I saw a video. I'm over here in Rwanda. I was in Kenya recently, and I saw a video of somebody who's basically saying that people are mad at them and upset at them all over the world. Essentially, like nobody. They're saying like nobody really likes us wherever we go. And so there's challenges, and I think there are some great people within the Somali community. I serve on I think that it's 100% true, but I do think that like as there seems to be a culture issue within the Somali community as well, which I think is what's leading to some of this stuff. But it's just really not ideal time for him, given all the larger stuff that's happening.
Yeah, it really is unfortunate. The timing is interesting for sure. Yeah, no, I totally get what you're saying there. And we have a really great community of people here in Lewiston, and this has never been a Somali issue. As far like with Amon and the residency stuff, this isn't a Somali issue, and this has nothing to do with his religion, his culture, his skin color. It has nothing to do with that. It has to do with integrity, and it has to do with say, like, you can say you live somewhere, but you actually need to prove that you live somewhere if you're going to be representing a group of people. There's that old saying, no taxation without representation. Like, this goes back to our founding fathers. You need to live where you represent. And unless you can show proof that you live where you say you live, you shouldn't be holding an office seat. And that's just, at the end of the day, I don't care who you are. That is the truth. And that's what this is. That's what this is really all about.
100%. Like, if you're duly elected, you're duly elected, right? And
Yes.
but if you don't live where you're supposed to live, that's obviously very problematic. We had a similar situation on our city council. I think when the city councilor was elected, he lived in town, but then he moved out of town. And then he ended up being the chair of the city council. And like apparently some people brought this to the mayor and to the city hall, and they're like, well, he has a vehicle registered in at an address in the town. Now that address there's no furniture there, nobody's living there. He was actually living in Gorham at the time, and it was well known actually in this situation, and they let him continue to serve as the chair of the city council, which was just wild. He didn't end up running for re-election, so he's not there anymore.
Well, that's good.
Probably partly because of that, but it's like some of the nonsense that goes on. It's like you can't be on the city council or be on the school board if you don't live where you're supposed to live. Like you can't run for office at any other level. You have to live like. You can't live in Augusta, for instance, and then pretend to be from way northern Maine like Troy Jackson. But that's a whole nother story. So, but yeah, so yeah, and then obviously he's now on the city council. But at the same meeting that they swore him in, they also opened an investigation on him, and he was the lone vote against it.
They did.
But what's interesting, yeah, we'll move on from there.
But I can tell you exactly how that's going to play out if you want my opinion.
Sure.
I honestly think that, they're going to do an investigation. I don't think Amon is dumb enough to not be sleeping in Ward 5 right now. I don't know where he's sleeping, whether that's on a couch or a spare bedroom. He is sleeping somewhere in Ward 5, and I really do believe that. The issue is he will not disclose where that is, and we are elected public officials. Anyone can Google my name and see what my address is. My address is listed on every single affidavit that I've signed. Saying that I don't feel safe is not an excuse to not know where I live, because I represent an entire ward of people. And the same goes for him. So I think what's going to happen is they will figure out that he does live in Ward 5, and he has been this whole time. And that whole investigation will be a big nothing. That's what's going to happen.
Which is kind of ridiculous because he signed an affidavit.
I know.
Right?
I know.
That's a legal declaration. And so that would mean that he was lying. And like, why, like, anyway, we need, we already have, like, even when politicians, publicly say things that are true, we're questioning whether or not they're being honest with us all the time. We think politicians are lying. So like, if we absolutely 100% for a fact know that you lied about something, and then you lied about lying about it, and then you wouldn't be honest about it until an investigation, that's not somebody we want representing us.
He does have a loophole. And let's segue into the State House again here, because this is one of the loopholes that I would like to close when I'm in Augusta. So there is an old law, residency law around like voting, and it's from the 80s. And it says that if you intend to return to an address that you have been displaced from, then you are legally allowed to say that that is your residence. So he was displaced, right? And so he is saying that he intends to return to 210 Blake Street someday. So that is why he is legally allowed to say that is his residence. And I call garbage on that, because common sense, right? This is a condemned building. This is a building that he does not own. He has absolutely no right to, in my opinion. I'm going to assume he has not been paying any sort of rent or lease on this building since he was taken out back in October of 2024. And so to say that you are going to return to this building, I think they have since they've gone through the Lewiston coding department, and they've gotten approved to turn this building into a residential building, because as it was before, it was simply a commercial building. And so somebody, I believe it's his brother, owns the building. They are working very, very slowly to renovate this building so it can become a residential building. But at the moment, it is not, and it's you can't live there. So I feel like there should be a time limit. Okay. So let's say my house burned down and I was displaced from my home for however long it takes for me to rebuild my home. I'm allowed to still claim my home, my residence, even though it burned down. But the difference is I own this home. Right. And so I think there needs to be something in our residency laws around voting that says, if you are displaced from somewhere because the building's been condemned and it's been more than 90 days, let's just say, then you're no longer allowed to use that as your residence. Like wherever you moved on to, that's where you need to claim, unless you own the property. I think owning the property is one thing. But when you are simply a renter at a property, I just think like that's a farce. You can't do that. I don't know.
Yeah.
So that is something that I'm going
Yeah.
after in Augusta. Yeah.
All right. Sounds good. So what are the other issues that I think that you want to tackle, or I should say that you want to tackle when you get to Augusta? So we talked about some of the things that initially motivated you. And I think one of the things you said is like representation, wanting to feel like somebody is actually cares about people with your views and values in Augusta. Are there any other like, issues that are like, this needs to be addressed?
Absolutely.
And yeah, what are like the top issues for you about like what's going on in Augusta and how the people of the city of Lewiston are not being represented well?
So let's start with LD 1971, which is the law that Janet Mills just passed to essentially make us a sanctuary state. She has now made it so hard for our law enforcement to do their job efficiently that maddens me so much. I have always stood behind our law enforcement, and I always will. I've always been a big proponent of making sure that our streets are safe, and that our schools are safe, and that I feel safe where I'm living. And that law has made it so something as simple as like a traffic stop. If a police officer stops somebody and has like a suspicion that maybe they're not here legally, they're not allowed to communicate with ICE about that. And that it just should not be like that. It should not be like that in the state, like especially with everything going on right now. I just think our police officers should be able to communicate with ICE and should be able to work together to make sure that, the people who are supposed to be here are here at the end of the day. So that's one of the biggest things I would love to fight Janet Mills up in Augusta on that one. I also, just the cost of living is just crazy right now. Their taxes just keep going up, and I know that there's money. I know there's a surplus that like needs to come back to us.
200 million. I think it's 200 million. I saw today. Yeah.
It's totally crazy. So I would love to be up there with the Republican Party working to get that back to, our middle class families that are just struggling to survive right now. What else? There's other things.
So in cost of living, like let's talk about that, because like
Sure.
what are the main things that are driving the cost of living that we can address in Augusta?
I just think there's maybe some deregulations that can happen so that everyday people can build houses and buy houses. I think there's just a lot of, government-owned housing, especially in Lewiston. And what's happening is it's driving up the taxes of everybody who owns their own home in Lewiston. We are so poor as far as like property taxes go. We just had a reevaluation here in Lewiston. I don't think our homes had been evaluated since the 80s. And so last year they sent people around and reevaluated every single home in the city. So all of our taxes are skyrocketing. And we just don't have the tax base to sustain it here. Like they just keep putting in more government housing, more apartment buildings. And they're not at market price. So it's draining us here. And so there has to be some solution. Maybe there's some sort of capital gains thing that we can work on to, I mean, I'm just throwing out ideas, right? I'm just thinking off the top of my head, but we have a lot of older people in single family homes here who are maybe ready to move on. We have this whole complex coming for, 55 plus at market rate. So maybe there's an incentive for them to, move into something like that and let a younger generation come in and buy one of these single family homes. Because housing costs are just out of control here. I don't have all the answers, but I
Yeah,
really
yeah,
want to go up there and I really want to try to find solutions to what's going on. Because, I
yeah.
mean, we're headed down a bad road here in Lewiston.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think
Yeah.
all across America, one of the things that I'm actually really excited about that I saw today, maybe like an hour ago, a little bit before we got
Mhm.
started, was a message that Trump put out on Truth Social, indicating that like one of the problems that is been identified by most people who are paying attention is major
Mhm.
corporations like buying up single family homes in America and then forcing
Yep.
more people into renting, taking up the stock and making it so that
Mhm.
there's less to buy, and that he's going to be working on regulation to stop them from being able to continue doing that, which I think is a really good thing because that is one of the problems. So housing cost is impacted by that, but just in general, housing cost is, rent cost. These things they've gone.
They're crazy.
Government run housing is much more expensive than if you just let the free market do it. Unfortunately, and on top of it, I didn't even think about that, but like because it's government owned, they're not paying taxes, which drives up the taxes for
Mhm.
everybody else in the
Mhm.
community, and that is problematic. Obviously, why shouldn't the state pay taxes to the town if it owns property in the town? That's an interesting thought, but that's a whole separate issue. But
Yeah,
yeah. Yeah, so affordability is definitely huge. So that's really
it is.
important. What
And we don't have a
about
lot of businesses here. I mean, in the grand scheme of
yeah,
things, in Lewiston, we really are a charity city, right? Like
mm,
the biggest, we do have the Walmart distribution center, right? So that's huge. Um, but if you really think about Lewiston, we have two hospitals here that are nonprofit. We have Bates College here, which is nonprofit, and those are like some of the biggest things in Lewiston, and they don't pay taxes to the extent that that I think they should be paying taxes here. Um, so I mean, there has to be a way to bring more businesses in here. Like Auburn kind of has it figured out, right? Like they have a lot of businesses there. They have a lot of shopping. They have a lot of restaurants. They have so much more than Lewiston has. We have some stuff, but it just doesn't sustain
yeah. Well,
what we
I
really
think
want.
in general, like to get to your point, is we need
Mm,
a state that has policies and regulations that are pro-business that would help
yes.
Lewiston, Auburn, everywhere, right? And I think this is
Mhm.
one of the challenges of the current administration is it's anti-business. I remember when Janet was elected that we used to have this thing when you drove into Maine that said "open for business," and they took that
Yeah.
down
Yeah.
when Janet
She
Mills
did.
was elected. And so,
She says,
yeah, we
like,
need
"Welcome
to.
home now."
Yeah,
I
right,
think,
right,
yeah.
right, right. Yeah. So, all right. Well, cool. Any other like things that are like big issues for you that you want to address? There's all kinds of fun ones on the
Yeah.
conservative side that we could throw out, like protecting girls' sports and spaces.
That is obviously super, super important to me. I have got 2 young female athletes, and, since day one, that's been important to me. M Men and women are different creatures. We are built differently, and men have a an advantage in strength, and size, and we do not play sports with each other for a reason, right? We fought so hard for women's rights back in the day, just for it to be like ignored all of a sudden. Like we're supposed to be equal, but we are not equal, and we're not supposed to be equal beings. Like men and women are different. So I'm a big proponent of keeping men out of women's sports. End of the day.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
I also, back to like taxes and stuff. There's definitely some MaineCare fraud happening in this state. And I
yep.
just a little bit, right? So I just think that we really need to make sure that we are not giving MaineCare to non-citizens. I think
Because
that's something that Janet Mills is like touting right now, right? Like MaineCare for anybody. And I just don't, that's not
they're
logical.
also. Well, it's not logical. It's also not. It's not legal for them
No,
to use federal dollars to
no.
give Maine Care, which is funded largely by the federal government. Maine just oversees it. Some of it is funded by us
Mhm,
locally, but a portion of it is funded by the federal government, and so it's illegal for us to use those funds for non-citizens,
mhm.
especially illegal aliens, right? And so, yeah, well, that would be good to cut
Yeah.
down on, on some of our taxes. I mean, one business alone has overbilled millions of dollars over the course of the past 5 or 6 years, and has only just now, once it became national headline, did they finally start to investigate it. And Janet Mills still has not spoken about it at all.
Of course not, because she's complacent. She won't speak on it.
She's complicit. Absolutely. I mean, they have to know that this is going on. It seems to me that it's like part of the fun. Like, I know that there's some of the stuff that the research that people have done, they found that some of these like fake childcare centers in Minnesota were making campaign contributions, max contributions to candidates, Somali candidates in Washington State who are running for some sort of an office. And so I don't know exactly what's going on, but something fishy, obviously, beyond just defrauding the government is going on there. And some of that same type of stuff, obviously, is going on in Lewiston and Portland as well. And I think this is where we've seen like a trend, and here's a pattern, here's a good way to find it. And so people are looking and they're finding all this fraud. But I think it goes far beyond the Somali community. I think people are focused on that, but I think the reality is there are so many other organizations that are doing the exact same thing. There's the NGOs, as we now call them. We used to call them nonprofits, NGO, same thing. The ones that are federally funded, that basically all of their funding comes from the federal government for the most part, or a significant portion of it are grifting off of the American taxpayer, and it's all a steal essentially. And there are some good nonprofits out there. Let's not go negative on all nonprofits. I serve on one, and it doesn't receive for the most part federal funding. So like not all nonprofits are bad, but there are a lot of them that are just grifting off of the American taxpayer. And it's if we fix that, I think that fixes a lot of things in the state.
Yeah, that would be awesome. And another thing that I would love to see is a full audit on every single nonprofit that received funds from the October 25th shootings that happened here in Lewiston. There was about $1.9 million from the money raised that was distributed to different nonprofits in Lewiston. And everybody who donated to that, myself included, we don't know where our money went. There's survivors and families of victims in this city who still have medical bills that aren't paid, and who are out of work and on disability because of how severely they were hurt during those shootings. And it is just sickening to me to think that almost $2 million that could have gone in their pockets to help them out went to nonprofits. And I want to see a full audit on that. Full audit. I want to know where all of those funds went. And it actually, the sweatshirt that I'm wearing right now says "We Are Lewiston" with the one. So my daughter, who's in college, was actually a senior in high school when the shootings happened. And she has an NIL agent, a name, image, likeness, because she's a college athlete. And she actually created this and sold these and took all the profit from selling these sweatshirts and T-shirts and gave it to the victims of the shootings, and to the same fund that everyone else gave it to, because there was only one place to give the money to. And so we sit back and we wonder, like, where did that money actually go? It's really disheartening.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. That's I've been seeing a lot about that, and I definitely think that's something that we need to know more about, for sure.
There's going to be a national news story on that tonight, actually.
Oh, wow.
News network. What is Como's news network? Do you know what I'm talking about?
News Nation, maybe? Is that
News
him?
Nation?
No?
Yeah, News Nation.
Yeah.
Tonight at 7 is running a story on the shootings and the nonprofits that received the funds and stuff. And I only know that because I got to meet the host of News Nation that's working on it. they came to Lewiston to shoot a story, and they needed a spot. Somebody called me up and asked, "Hey, do you have somewhere where we could come do a quick interview with this national news outlet?" And I said, "Sure." So I opened up our small business because it was a Sunday and it was closed anyway. And yeah, the news outlet showed up and came in and interviewed Paul LePage. Actually, he'll be on that. So yeah, so I'm looking forward to watching that tonight because I'm curious what they've uncovered and what they've figured out with their investigation.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that'll be good to find out. I look forward
Yeah.
to hearing more. So,
Mhm.
yeah, I'm trying to think if there's anything else. I think the T-shirt was not the sweatshirt, I should say, was the last thing that you were wanting to
Yes.
mention. Is there anything
So,
else that there's tons of stuff that we could talk about in Lewiston, obviously. But is there anything else that you feel like you want to share before? I think we need to make sure that people can find you, which shouldn't be hard. You're
Yeah.
relatively easy to find. One of the things that I find is interesting is like the way in which people think about the positions. I think I call it Maine State House, but I think your page is Janet Beaudoin for Maine State Representative. Is that right? On
Yes.
Facebook?
It is Janet Beaudoin for Maine State Representative. I actually just got a website. It's up and launched. I'm going to post a link to that on my Facebook page soon. So there is that. And right on my website, there is obviously a spot where you can donate if you feel so inclined. All the money that I'm raising is literally going towards just getting the word out there. Because a special election is definitely not on people's radar, right? Going to vote on February 24th is not something that anybody has on their radar. That's such a strange time of year to go vote. So any money raised is literally going towards getting the word out, mailings, phone calls, literature, all of the things, just to get my name out there and to get that date out there. So voting is February 24th at the Multipurpose Center or Longley School over in Lewiston, across from the Coliseum. And then early voting begins on January 26th. You can go right to City Hall and you can vote at City Hall. If you're an absentee voter, those absentee ballots are available for request right now off the state of Maine's website. But my website does let you know early voting starts January 26th at City Hall. Election day is February 24th. And with a special election, whoever gets out and gets the most votes wins, right? Like it's just the two of us. So, people need to show up. Your vote 100% matters and counts in a special election. So I can't say it enough. Please, please, please make a plan to vote. Please make a plan to vote.
Yeah, absolutely. If you can get out to vote, we also need people to help. I think if people are willing to help kind of knock on doors and do whatever is necessary to get people out to vote. Because I think one of the things that the conservatives, the Republicans at this point, we've become the low propensity voters. And so we need to change that. We need to figure out what we can do. We need to get people out to vote because we need to win. And if we win, then we trim the majority that the Democrats have in the House and make it more challenging for them. That means one or two people missing, two people, I think at this point would be, missing a vote for whatever reason. And all of a sudden we can swing that, we can win that vote, which happens a lot. But if you didn't know that, there are a lot of times where people they'll be absent and therefore they won't be able to vote. And this puts us in a position where we could potentially stop some bad stuff from happening. And that's really important. So if you're in Lewiston, you're in District 94, we ask and plead with you to go out to vote. I also would say, I think the max contribution is what, $500?
$500 is the max contribution. Yes.
So, and there's a link to that on your Facebook page, and also will be on your website. And so, consider a gift. It's like we can all wish that money wasn't in politics, but the reality is it is. And
Yeah.
and while it is, we have to use the tools that are at our disposal in order to be able to win, in order to ensure that conservative policies are enacted in our state and crazy liberal stuff is pushed back. And so please consider doing some sort of a donation if you're out there. That would be really great to help
Yeah.
Janet Beaudoin win. I had to run. I ran in 2022 as well the first time, and had to. I initially was going to run clean, then I shifted and I ran traditional and did a bunch of fundraising. So I know what it's like to raise funds. It's difficult, but it's worth it. We've got to take back our state, and this is an easy way to, not an easy, but like one of the only things that we can do right now to have a meaningful impact. If you win, you would also be running immediately again in
So November. in my own like door knocking that I'm doing, I am walking around with a signature thing, and I'm collecting my own signatures to run for November, because if I get in February, that's great. But I'm essentially running a year-long campaign here, because those same people who are voting for me now need to come back in November and vote for me all over again. Yeah.
Absolutely. All right. Well, definitely, people, let's get out and vote. Let's support Janet. We need to take back our state. So thank you so much for running. I feel like there was something else that came up in my mind that I was like, let's talk about that, but I've lost it. It's gone.
Okay.
That's frustrating. It was going to be, this is actually really important, because I think like you mentioned some things at the beginning, and it was kind of a lot for me to take in.
Sorry.
No, it's all really good stuff. But I think like one of the things that you mentioned, I've been seeing some people try to get elected to school boards and stuff like that, but without being involved in anything. And I think you mentioned you got your start on the PTO. And so I think like the question I would have for you is like, if there's somebody out there that's like, I would love to do this, but either I don't feel equipped, or like what advice would you give to somebody who's like thinking maybe I might want to potentially run for school board or city council or something like that? What advice would you give somebody? But maybe I don't feel like, I know enough, or all this stuff. Like, what, just in general, I guess, what advice would
I
you
had
give?
all of those same insecurities when I first started. Even when I joined the PTO, it was intimidating. You're walking into a room of other moms who have been doing this for a while, and they all know each other, and it definitely feels strange. You feel like, you're entering this like club that you're not a part of. But all I can say is, if you feel like you have it in your heart, like you want to run for something, or you want to have a voice in what's going on, just do it. Just do it. Prior experience does not matter. Having a college education, it does not matter. If you have a will and a desire to go in and make decisions and be a part of some sort of process, do it, because you will not regret it. It's been super rewarding. I've learned so much. I've grown so much as a person over the last, however many years I've been doing this. And I'm proud of the work that I've done, and I'm proud of the votes that I have taken and the grounds that I have stood. Even if I haven't been successful every time, it's really opened a lot of doors, and I've met so many wonderful people. And right now, I have a whole army behind me in this election, and I can't say thank you enough to everybody that is helping me. The donations, big and small, I'm so humbled by it. And all the boots on the ground, all of the text messages I've gotten, I'm having weekly check-ins with people from the Maine GOP who are just in my corner, and I can't say thank you enough. Like, I really feel supported, and I really think we're going to win this. So get involved. It's worth it. You're going to make some lifelong friends. It's good stuff.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. And again, I would say the same thing. Get involved in some way. We need people at so many different levels. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. So thanks so much. And we wish you the best of luck. And let me know if there's anything that I can do as well.
Thank
All right.
you.
Well, thank you all for watching. I will be on, I think, next week. We'll have another one coming up, possibly, if I'm not mistaken. We're going to have Colonel Ron Russell, who is running for U.S. House against Shelley Pingree. So we'll see
Nice.
you all next week.
All right.